Tonight we've got a collection of peaceful bedtime stories for kids. Let's get cozy and drift off together. Before we do, could you please tap subscribe? By doing this small thing, you'll let YouTube know you love what we do. Let's get ourselves cozy, snuggle down, and I'll begin. This is Turtle Island by Luke Prendergast. Kit had lived in Bangkok for her entire life, which was now almost 8 years and 7 months to the very day. Her parents had moved to the city many years before, and it was there, in a top-floor apartment building that looked out over the bustling, blaring tumble-jumble of the city, that first she, and then her little sister, So, had been born. Kit loved living in Bangkok. There was never a dull moment. The streets were filled from dawn till dusk with the shouts of pedestrians, the vrooms of cars, the beeps and splutters of little tuk-tuks. Buses were packed, the subways were hot, and boats sailed up the wide Chao Phraya river that wound through the city. On the weekends, markets spread out like vast mazes across Bangkok, full of people buying bags of fruit or haggling for the best deal. It was only at the temple, which Kit's parents took her to from time to time, where there was any peace, cool air floating in through the windows, rippling at the pale petals of the flowers laid at the big Buddha's feet. And yet, as much as she loved living in the city, Kit dreamed of going to one of the islands that rose in the ocean just off the coast. She and her little sister would pore over books and watch endless documentaries about these islands, with their sandy beaches and blue waters and bays full of fish. And what they were most captivated by was the snorkeling. Kit and So would play games in their living room, pretending they were snorkeling in the ocean. They'd snap on the goggles they wore when they went to the swimming pool and wheel their arms around as though they were swimming through water. "Look, an angelfish!" Kit would cry, pointing at the sofa. And they would stop and stare as if it were really there. Or, "Look, a clownfish!" Or, "There, a barracuda!" Or, best of all, "Look, a turtle!" The two sisters were absolutely obsessed with turtles. They loved the mosaic pattern of their shells. They loved the way their heads and feet poked out. They loved how wisely they blinked their eyes and how gracefully they swam through the aquamarine waters. There was nothing in the world that Kit wanted more than the opportunity to actually get to see a turtle swimming in the sea. When her parents told her one morning that they were going to go on holiday to an island where they could snorkel, she thought she might explode with happiness. "Oh, Mama, oh, Papa!" Kit cried, throwing her arms around each of her parents in turn. Thank you. But where are we going?" Kit's dad pulled out a map and pointed to a tiny green speck in the middle of the sea, just off the mainland coast. "Just here," he said. "Turtle Island." It was called Turtle Island, Kit's dad explained, because it was shaped just like a turtle. When he said this, Kit glanced back at the map and saw he was right. You could see a bigger lump of land that looked like a turtle's body and a smaller connecting lump that looked rather like its head. But it was also called Turtle Island because its coves and corals were notorious hangout spots for families of turtles. So if you were very lucky, you might be able to spot one. Kit and So held each other's hands and squeezed. They simply couldn't wait. One morning, they got up early, shouldered their bags and headed with their parents to the train station. There they had to get a long train. It took over 4 hours. And then they had to get on a big boat, which skimmed and skipped across the deep blue waves of the ocean. Kit and So stood behind the rails of the front of the boat, letting the wind and sea spray leave fine white crystals of salt in their tangled hair. They were the first ones to see the island approach. At first, just a blot on the horizon, and then it grew and grew until they could see the jungle-covered hills, the strips of white sand, the parades of small buildings. "Turtle Island," they gasped. "That's it," said their mum. Kit and So wanted to go straight to the beach with their brand new snorkeling masks, but their parents told them they had to be patient. Good things come to those who wait. That was one of their dad's favourite sayings, and Kit knew he was right about that, even if she didn't like to admit it. So instead of going straight to the beach, they took their bags to the room they were staying in and changed into their beach clothes. Then they walked down towards the little town and stopped at a restaurant to eat some delicious food, steaming plates of noodles, fragrant curries, mounds of fluffy rice. When their tummies were full and satisfied, Kit and So blinked their best puppy dog eyes at their parents. "Can we go snorkeling now, please?" they asked. Their parents laughed. "Yes," their mum said to them, ruffling first Kit's and then So's hair. "We can go snorkeling now." So they picked up their belongings and walked down to the beach. The sand was pale and so soft beneath Kit's feet she thought she might just sink down through it forever. Sea almond trees grew here and there along the beach, stretching their long branches out above the water and leaving pools of shade on the sand. The sun was a bright spot in the sky, and its light twinkled and flashed over the water. Their dad lay out towels on the sand and then helped them apply another layer of sun cream to their skin. It was very important, he said, to ensure they didn't burn. Then it was time. They were free to go snorkeling. Kit and So snapped on their snorkeling masks, and So snapped on her armbands because she wasn't such a strong swimmer yet. Then they gave each other a look and ran into the sea. The water was warm as a bath and splish-splashed around their knees as they ran. Kit threw herself into the water and felt her whole body lighten, as though she had left Earth entirely and were floating through a blue outer space. Even sounds disappeared, replaced with the gargle of the ocean. And she had to turn around to see that So had dived in behind her. Kit motioned with her hand. "Come on, let's go." Together they swam further out to sea. Below them, Kit could see how the sand gradually fell away from them, as though they were swimming down a slope. Big beige and grey rocks lay half buried in the seabed, and once she even saw a bright red crab scuttle out from behind one rock and disappear behind another. And then the seashell gave way to coral. The coral grew out beneath them like a magical, alien underwater forest. At first, it looked like pale rock, but when you looked closer, you could see it was teeming with life. Orange and pink and purple flowers opened and closed all over it. Bubbles collected on its surface and rose to fizz up through the water. And the ocean was full of fish. Fish of every imaginable colour swam around, playing in the coral. Fish striped black and white like a zebra. Bright blue fish squashed fat as a plate. And long, flat fish with pointy pinprick noses. Kit and So pointed here and there, showing each other what they found. They were held by the warm palm of the water, floating on its gentle currents. At one point, Kit waved So over and pointed down. They saw a dark orange octopus hiding out in the bottom of the coral. It waved its legs at them, as though saying hello, leaving a little squirt of octopus ink trailing through the water. Then So called Kit over and pointed at where a bright red lobster was crawling across the ocean floor. Clickety-clack went its claws. In fact, Kit and So saw so many wonderful sea creatures that day of snorkeling that when they got back to shore, they weren't even sad that they hadn't spotted a turtle yet. "It's okay," Kit said, throwing a towel around her shoulders. "There's plenty more time to see a turtle." So nodded in agreement. "Yes," she said. "Hopefully we'll see one tomorrow." The next day they went out snorkeling again and saw all kinds of wonderful fish. Big, silvery barracuda, rainbow-coloured fish with shimmery scale, even stonefish, which sometimes tricked you into thinking they were just rocks on the seabed until you spotted them moving. But still, no turtles. That evening, while having dinner, Kit and So told their parents that they were afraid that they might leave Turtle Island without ever having seen a turtle. "And it wouldn't be so bad," Kit said, "because we've had such a wonderful time on this amazing island and seen so many other weird and wonderful fish who live in the sea. But we really do wish that we could see a turtle, because turtles are our favourites." "Well," said her mother, giving her a loving smile, "perhaps you'll have better luck tomorrow." Tomorrow was their last day on Turtle Island, so Kit and So got up especially early to make the most of the time they had left. They made sandcastles on the beach. They drank coconut water straight out of coconuts. And for lunch, they ate mangoes with sweet, sticky rice, which they bought from a stall right next to the beach. And, of course, they went snorkeling. They swam and swam and swam, dazzled by the sun-touched water and all the marine life that flourished beneath its surface. They floated through shoals of tiny fish. They even swam out as far as a small island out to sea, no more than a grass-covered rock, to see whether the turtles were hanging out there. But no luck. There were no turtles to be found. Kit clambered up on the island rock and pulled off her snorkel. So hoisted herself out of the water too and sat beside Kit. They were both breathing heavily from the swim, water dripping off their hair and onto the rock beneath them. In front of them, they could see the beach they'd swam from. Their parents, two small figures, watching carefully from the shore. "Oh dear," So harumphed. "We're not going to see a turtle, are we?" Kit shook her head. "I don't think so," she said. "I really thought we were going to see one today," So said. "So did I," Kit agreed. "But we've seen many other things, haven't we? We should be happy about that." And they were happy. Both of them were happy and grateful for that. But that didn't change the fact that they were still disappointed about not having seen a turtle. Both of those things could be true. And Kit was just about to say something just to that effect when the strangest thing happened. The rock they sat on began to move. At first, Kit wasn't sure if she just imagined it. She glanced at So, but there was a look on her face mirroring Kit's own that told her that she'd not imagined it. The rock had definitely moved. And then it did it again. It tipped slightly to the side, and then it seemed to slide forwards through the water, like it wasn't grown out of the earth but floating on top of the water. So gave Kit a puzzled look. "Is this rock alive?" she asked. Then, as if for an answer, out of the rock right by their feet emerged a big head. The head turned itself round to look at them, blinking at them with big, wise, kindly eyes. And then Kit understood. They were sitting on the back of a giant turtle. "Whoa!" whispered So. "Whoa to you too," said the turtle. Kit almost jumped. "You're a giant turtle," she said. "And you can talk?" "Oh, yeah," replied the turtle with a smile. "Is that a surprise? You're a tiny human, and yet I see that you can talk, too." Kit smiled at that. Her initial shock was beginning to fade, and in its place bubbled up a joyous excitement. Finally, they were seeing a turtle. And even better than that, they were seeing a giant talking turtle. She couldn't believe her luck. Do you have a name?" Kit asked the turtle. And the turtle replied, "Oh, I sure do. My name is Ivan. And what's your name?" Kit introduced herself, and so did So. Then Kit apologized for climbing up on Ivan the turtle's back. "Oh, it's no problem at all," said Ivan. "I looked just like a little island, so how are you to know? In fact, I only popped my head out of my shell because I heard you two saying how disappointed you were that you hadn't seen a turtle here on Turtle Island yet. And when I hear something like that, well, I just can't let anyone down. Say," he added, "would you like to take a tour of the ocean with me? You can stay sitting up there on my back, and I can show you all sorts of wondrous things that live here in the ocean." "Oh, yes, please," cried So. "We certainly would," Kit agreed. "But we'll have to ask our parents first." Ivan said, "Of course you must. Otherwise they'd worry." And with that, he began to swim gracefully towards the shore, bearing them on his back. Their parents looked a little startled to see them riding on top of a giant turtle. But Kit and So gave them big beaming smiles and waves to let them know that all was okay. They explained to their parents that Ivan the friendly turtle wanted to take them on a little tour of the ocean. And could they go, please? "There's nothing to worry about," Ivan assured their parents. "I've known these waters for almost 120 years. They'll be very safe with me." Their parents gave their permission, and Ivan turned around and swam back out to sea. "You're 120 years old?" So asked him, in a voice full of wonder. "Almost," said the turtle. "And that's not even very old for a giant turtle like me. We can live a very long time indeed. Now, are you ready?" Kit and So nodded. They were ready. "Okay then," said Ivan. "Hold on tight." And suddenly they were sailing swifter and swifter through the water. The breeze blew through their hair, dragging it in dancing tendrils around their cheeks. Water sprayed up from around the edges of Ivan's shell, sending a fine, salty mist around Kit and So's faces. It reminded Kit of being on the boat from the mainland, but 100 million times better, because now they were alone in the middle of the great ocean on the back of a magical giant turtle. "Just to let you know," Ivan said, "we have some friends arriving." And a few moments later, a flying fish jumped out of the water and soared straight over them. Then another and another, until a whole shoal of flying fish, sparkling and glittering in the sun, arced over them like a rainbow. So giggled as a swash of watery droplets landed on her face. She reached up to try and touch one as they flew overhead, but they were too nifty for her. They just shook their tails cheekily and hopped right out of her way. Then Ivan asked them if they fancied taking a dip under the water. "Yes, please, Ivan," they said. "Deep breaths then, both of you," Ivan said. Kit and So breathed in until their entire chests and tummies were full of air. They gave Ivan a thumbs up, and then, in a flash and a splash, they were diving down, down, down beneath the sea. Ivan was such a strong swimmer that they moved through the water like a bird in flight. Schools of fish darted and hung around them, waving their little fins at them in welcome. Ivan gave a little wriggle and pointed ahead with one of his legs. Kit and So peered through the water, and if they hadn't been so cautious about holding their breath, what they saw would have taken the air straight out of their lungs. There, swimming around a coral-covered rock, was a whole family of turtles. They flippered this way and that, reaching out their tender mouths to pick at the coral. It was utterly magical. More beautiful than anything they had seen on the television. More wondrous than anything they had read in their books. When, at last, Ivan dropped them back off with their parents at the shore, Kit and So threw their arms around him and covered his smooth shell in little kisses. "Thank you, Ivan," they said. "That was a dream come true." "You're very welcome, both of you," Ivan said. "It was a great pleasure to show you the ocean I call home, and I'm very happy that even at my ripe old age, I've found myself 2 new friends. I count myself very lucky for that." Ivan asked them how long they were staying on Turtle Island, and Kit told him that sadly they were leaving early the next morning. They wished that they could stay forever, but they had to return to their home in Bangkok. "Well," Ivan said, with a wise old smile, "perhaps we shall meet each other again one day. The world has a funny way of bringing good friends back together." Kit and So remembered these words spoken by Ivan the next morning when they packed their bags and boarded the boat back to the mainland. They remembered them when they got on the long train back home. And they remembered them when they got back to their high-up apartment, which looked no different from when they'd left it the week before. But slowly, the memory of those words faded. Or if it didn't fade, Kit and So remembered them less often. But from time to time, they would remember them, when they were watching one of their nature documentaries, or leafing through one of their science books. Then they would give each other a smile and wonder how their old friend Ivan was doing. One afternoon, they were walking home along the banks of the Chao Phraya River with their parents. The sun was hanging low in the sky, and its reflection in the water made it seem like the river had caught fire. It was alive, with orange flickering flames. Ivan and his words were far from their mind. They were busy instead, talking about what they wanted for supper. Kit wanted a delicious Penang curry, but So was more in the mood for noodles. Then their father pointed his long, wrinkly finger out to the river and said, "Hold on a minute. What's that?" Kit followed where he pointed and couldn't believe her eyes. She took So's hand and went over to the railings by the side of the river. She peered closer. Yes, it was true. Her eyes weren't deceiving her. There, swimming up the Chao Phraya River, was Ivan, the giant sea turtle. He was waving his flippery arm at them. "Hello," he called out. He had swum all the way from Turtle Island just to visit them. He wondered if Kit and So fancied going for another swim. Kit and So looked at their parents, their eyes full of hope. Ivan had come to visit them. Could they go for a swim down the river with him? Could they? Please? Their mother looked over at Ivan, who was bobbing peacefully in the water. She gave Kit and So a big smile and stroked their hair. "Go on then," she said, "but not for too long. Then perhaps you could invite Ivan around for supper. What do you think?" "We think that sounds perfect," Kit said. And then, not waiting a moment longer, they went down into the river to meet their wise old friend. The Sleepy Bear by Jane Thomas. Winter the grizzly bear had come into the world one cold January night, more than 2 years before this story is set. He and his brother and sister appeared into the warmth of their mother's den, buried deep in a snowdrift on the northern slopes of Eagle Peak in Yellowstone. Their mother had curled her soft body and legs around the 3 tiny bears, protecting her young for month after month, until the outside world had wakened enough and the leaves were unfurling on the trees. Winter would never forget the first time he left the den. High up on the mountainside, they emerged to a land still covered in white, looking down towards green valleys that were dressed with flowing fields of wildflowers. Flashes of colour poured and spilled into the scene. The 3 cubs had stayed close to their mother, learning to climb a tree as fast as a flash, learning to grab a fish with a dab and a dash. For 8 months, they'd followed close behind her, watching and copying her every move. In the moments where she rested, the trio batted away butterflies with paws that seemed to grow with each passing day. They rolled down hills, head tucked in and arms wrapped around their body, so perfect little balls of brown fur raced down the slopes. In the warmest months of the summer, they wrestled in the shallows of the river, watching as the waters that had raged when they first emerged slowly stalled to a sedentary stream as the last of the snow melted and headed towards other rivers and other lakes and distant seas. And as their first autumn appeared, Winter and his brother and sister learned the berries that were good to eat, found the nuts and grasses that were the most sweet and succulent, and dug deep into the ground to find the richest roots. They and their mother ate and ate to keep them full and safe for their long winter's sleep high on the slopes of Eagle Peak, buried beneath the snow. Winter had passed his first whole hibernation with his siblings and his mother, and then spent spring and summer refining his hunting skills and tree climbing and berry finding. Then, together they'd headed for the safety of a den for their second winter together. This year, when they emerged, blinking against the brightness of the sunshine, stretching and easing the sleep from their bones after having been curled up together for so many months, their mother had wished them well and sent them on their way, nudging them towards different corners of Yellowstone National Park. It was time for them to be by themselves at last, to use all the lessons they had learned, and to live the lives of free bears, wandering in one of the world's great wildernesses. Sometimes, when he was down by his favourite fishing spot, where the salmon leaped and the fireweed rustled softly in the breeze, Winter would see his brother further downstream. They would smile at each other and wave, noses twitching to read the messages sent through the air, but generally each kept themselves to themselves. It was a solitary life, but not a lonely one, for grizzly bears are born to live alone and love the freedom they're given by being able to spend day after day, week after week, and month after month, just by themselves. Winter usually stayed in the same broad area, allowing himself to venture as far south as the fallen rocks, as far east as the river, as far west as the water the colour of sapphires that steamed gently all day and all night, and as far north as the meadows where the bison grazed. One morning he had allowed himself to go further, sniffing the air cautiously and following new smells and scents until he came upon a clearing and saw for the first time in his life a strange new animal that was bright blue and shiny and roared in a way he'd never heard an animal roar before. And then more creatures had emerged from the blue animal and set a blanket on the ground. And they had all sat down and taken out boxes filled with foods that had scents such as Winter had never known. Winter sat and watched from the safety of the shadows of the trees, returning to the sight again and again, and always seeing the same scene. Except sometimes the giant animal, which made strange noises, was red, like the setting sun, or silver, like the fish that leapt, or black, like the sky at night. And sometimes the smaller creatures that emerged were very quiet and sat peacefully looking out at the world from behind strange black boxes that clicked and flashed. And sometimes there were loads of the smaller creatures, and they ran around making noises and shouted and screamed and laughed. The longer he watched, the more Winter learned. Soon he found out that the little creatures were called people. Sometimes, when the people weren't looking, Winter would emerge from his hiding place, lumbering over to their picnic blankets as softly and gently as he could, sniffing and peering at the food within. There were tastes he'd never known, with the tang of salt and vinegar dancing on his tongue, and the strange texture of cheese and soft bread getting stuck for a while in his teeth. Winter didn't head to the clearing every day, but on the days he did go, he learned which foods were good and which were not. He loved the fruits that appeared on the picnic blankets, fruits that didn't grow anywhere in Yellowstone. Sometimes the creatures left things behind, carelessly discarded packets that rustled as he picked them up, and bottles filled with strange-coloured liquids that tasted as sweet as 100 raspberries in a single sip. Winter ate them all, for his mother had given him the very important job of eating as much as possible in preparation for the long months of winter, when he would need to dig a den and hide himself away from the world. There were days when Winter let himself be idle for a few hours, when he lay on his back in the soft grasses of the meadow and watched the eagles soar high above. He wished that he could fly, drifting around on the thermals, swooping high and low, skimming across the surface of a river. And sometimes he was sure the birds were showing off, teasing him with their skills. On one of the first days by himself, Winter had climbed a tree, reaching up branch by branch and going as high as he dared, before launching himself into the sky the way the eagles did. His fall to the ground was slowed by those same branches, and he ouched and bothered his way to the grass far below. Winter had looked up and down and left and right, checking that nobody else had seen his foolishness and tucking away his new knowledge for future use. Bears did not fly, he now knew. His mother had been right, and she had taught him everything he needed to know to survive in the world. From now on, he would remember the lessons and not try to be something he was not. Bears and eagles, Winter thought to himself as he lay on his back and watched them wheel and swoop, were very different beasts. As indeed, he supposed, were bears and bison. The bison always travelled in huge groups, and one afternoon he tried to count the animals as they grazed in the field below. By the time he reached 3,000, he was feeling quite cross-eyed and confused and gave up, realising that these animals that wanted to be around thousands of others were very different to bears. One afternoon in late summer, as he played on the shingle beaches and dashed in and out of the waters catching the silver salmon that leapt and wriggled and surged, he thought he saw his mother high on a mountainside, looking down at him and smiling. He wasn't sure, but just in case, he took extra care to charge and dive and catch as well as he ever had, reassuring her that he was doing well in the world and he had learned from all the lessons she had shared. And one evening in the late autumn, he had seen his sister heading towards the same patch of berries as himself, holding back to let her go ahead and eat them instead of him. For a moment he wondered about going forwards and tapping her on the shoulder and wrestling and playing with her as they had in those early years. But his sister gave off such an air of contentment, her soft breaths showing white in the air as the coolness of the evening took hold, that he held back and let her be, safe and happy to be alone in the world. There was one thing Winter's mother hadn't told him, but that he had decided all for himself. He knew that he needed to eat and eat in order to survive the 5 months he would lie buried in his den beneath the snow, and she had given him all the skills he would ever need to be able to do that 10 times over. As late autumn reached towards early winter, as the days grew shorter and the nights closed in, he was more aware than ever that he wanted to fill his mind with all things beautiful and wonderful, so that he would dream the best and most glorious dreams as he slept for month after month. And so, every moment of winter's days were filled with finding something more extraordinary than he'd seen on the last. He watched the leaves on trees as they turned from green into brown and red and yellow, seeing how their edges dried and curled, and finally, when the winds laced with ice whipped through the valleys, they drifted softly and gently to the ground. He felt them under his great paws, the crunching of the dry ones and soft slipperiness of the wet ones, and sometimes he lay in piles of them and kicked his feet so they danced in the air once more before falling down on his nose. He watched as the other animals prepared for winter too, seeing how the squirrels piled up nuts and buried them one by one into the ground, gently patting them into place and looking around to find ways of remembering their secret store. And one by one the birds started to fly south, sometimes in small groups and sometimes with thousands flying together, their wings beating in unison as they soared towards warmer weather and sunnier skies. In those last weeks before he headed up Eagle Peak to make his den, Winter sniffed the air and knew that the first snows were coming. He loved the snow. He loved the feel of it falling onto his face and fur, and he loved the way it crunched under his feet. He loved rolling into giant drifts and sliding down the slopes, looking back at the trails he left behind. Sometimes, when it was snowing hard, he could walk for 10 paces and look back to find his tracks already covered by falling snow, and he felt as if he was magically invisible to the rest of the world. When it was like this, he dared himself to dance, lifting his giant feet and humming sounds to himself that sounded like the river and the wind in the trees and the screeches of eagles high above. No other living beast would ever know that Winter danced in the snow, for he always took care to do this only when the snow fell thick and fast, and his footsteps were filled in forever as quickly as he made them. The giant blue and red and black creatures Winter now knew to be cars stopped coming when the snows came. Sometimes the smaller creatures appeared, balancing on slender skis and racing fast across the countryside, weaving between the trees and shrieking with delight. They didn't come any more with their rustling packets of strange-tasting food and fruits from lands far away, but they made him laugh in the way they charged across the snow-covered landscape, stopping sometimes to scoop up handfuls of the soft white powder and throw it at each other. He saw them pile the snow together once, forming it into the shape of a giant bear. That night, after the small creatures had gone, he went to the bear and patted the snow into place, putting a smile on the snow bear's face. The same small creatures returned the next day and saw what had been done, and he saw them laughing and scratching their heads and looking around, for who could possibly have done this? And safe behind a snowdrift, Winter laughed to himself to watch their confusion and delight. It was when the sun began to sink so low in the sky that the days barely had light left in them that Winter knew it was time to begin his annual trip to the highest reaches of Eagle Peak. His mother had always told him to create his den on the north-facing slopes of the mountain. It was the coldest part, where the winds blew the snow into the highest mounds, piling up the warmth above him as he slept through the long winter months. By now, Winter was so large that it was almost difficult to drag himself up the mountainside. Each step felt heavier and heavier, and the snow became deeper and deeper. He looked up and chose a tree to aim for. The highest, strongest, toughest tree he could find, that would be the perfect placement for his first solo den. For hour after hour he trudged through the snow, his eyes almost completely closed against the winds that whipped and swirled around him. Winter thought of the den he would build and the sleep he would have, and the dreams that would fill his mind for month after month. And when he reached the giant tree, he set about digging deep into the ground, pulling up rocks and plants and stones and soft earth. He dug far into the massive roots to create something of a cave, and when he was finished, he turned to take one last look at the world before he retreated. Stretching as far as he could see was a blanket of white. Far beneath him, far, far away, he saw and heard of 3,000 bison marching slowly and steadily across the land. A golden eagle soared above, its feathers a dark blur against the falling snow. Winter whispered a soft goodbye to everything he knew and loved, and headed into the softness of his den, turning himself this way and that on the earth floor, until he found just the way to curl himself to be as warm and cozy as possible. He kept one eye on the entrance for a while, watching as the snow piled up and up, until he was quite sealed off from the world. He lay, wrapped in cozy silence and sleepy darkness. As the snow grew deeper and deeper above him, the cries of the eagle and the whistle of the wind were lost. Winter smiled to himself as he looked back on his first spring, his first summer, his first autumn that he had spent roaming the wilderness. He thought of the way the river had churned and roared during those early months, filled with the icy water of melting snow, and how the brightest, freshest, greenest leaves had dared to unfurl as the sun rose warmer and higher in the sky. He thought of the fish he'd caught and the warm roots he had pulled from the ground, and the berries that had appeared brighter and plumper as the year went on. He thought of the strange tangs of the food he had tried that the little people brought. He thought of all the animals readying themselves in their own way for the winter, some heading south, and others piling up stores of food, and the other animals, the chipmunks and the mice and the frogs that he had seen heading off to hibernate, just like him. He thought of his mother and his brother and his sister, probably not so very far away, curled up safe and warm in their own dens far beneath the snow. And Winter knew he was ready for a long and wonderful sleep, dreaming 1,000 dreams of everything he'd seen and done. The spring would be beautiful again. The summer would be filled with magic. But now it was time to sleep and rest, to drift away and hide from the world for a while. He breathed soft and low, just the way his mother had taught him, gently in and gently out, gently in and gently out. His body relaxed and was warm and safe and flowing with gentle dreams. Munchy the Raccoon in Pizzatopia by Alicia Ainsley. It was a beautiful sunny day, and Munchy the Raccoon walked down the street with a skip in his step. Today was a special day for Munchy. Today was his first day at his new job. Munchy had never had a job before, so he didn't know what to expect. All he knew was that he was eager to get started and itching to learn. When Munchy was debating what to do for a job, he thought about what he loved to do. Everybody said that if he found a job he loved, then he would never work a day in his life. And Munchy liked the sound of that. So Munchy thought hard. As he thought, his mind drifted to what he was having for lunch. And so he realized that what he loved was eating, eating, and more eating. A job that involved food was essential. And when he saw the advertisement for a job at Mia and Marcello's Pizzatopia, it couldn't have been more perfect. Munchy the Raccoon loved pizza. It was one of his favourite foods in the whole world. He didn't mind what topping it had, whether it was covered in olives, pineapple or chili peppers. Munchy would gratefully gobble it up without complaint. Mia and Marcello's Pizzatopia had been running for a couple of years, and the dynamic duo who owned it had built up a big reputation during that time. Munchy had heard many good things about the pizza at Mia and Marcello's, but he was still yet to try it. He hoped that he would get to do lots of taste testing on the job. Now, with Munchy's first day of work ahead, he giddily skipped all the way to Mia and Marcello's Pizzatopia, eager to begin. As Munchy approached the big red sign above the shop door, he could see that Mia and Marcello were already busy taking orders. Munchy stepped through the front door and announced, "Hello, Mio and Marcello. I'm here for my first day of work." Marcello looked up over the shop counter, his beady eyes surveying Munchy with curiosity, and then a glint of realization. The beady-eyed frog called out in an Italian accent, "Oh good, you're here! Mia, the raccoon is here!" Then, from the back of the pizza kitchen, walked out a tall, blue-tinged Italian greyhound, wearing a purple hairnet over her ears. It was Mia, who had interviewed Munchy for the job. Mia walked over and smiled at Munchy. "Welcome, Munchy. It is good to see you," she said warmly. "Are you ready to get started?" Munchy nodded his head eagerly, and Mia led him through into the back of the shop. Mia gave Munchy a tour of the pizza kitchen, which was already kicking into action for the day. There was a large wood-fired oven, already cooking up some pizzas, a long worktop sprinkled with flour with several pizza dough bases already laid out, waiting to be covered in toppings. And on the other side of the counter were buckets full of different ingredients and toppings for the pizzas. Whilst Mia gave Munchy a tour, Marcello the frog answered the phone and took down food orders. They were piling up fast. There wasn't time to guide Munchy through the pizza-making process. He would have to learn as they went along. They had some orders to fulfill. Marcello toddled over to Mia and Munchy with his gangly frog legs and slapped a piece of paper down on the worktop. "Here's your first order, il bambino," Marcello commanded, twizzling his moustache with his fingers. "The customer wants a pizza luna with a side of mozzarella sticks." Mia commented with a smile, "Ooh, very cheesy." Marcello responded with a grin, "And very delicious." Marcello and Mia were very different from one another, but they shared the same love for pizza. At first sight, anyone who saw Marcello and Mia together would never guess that they were married. Marcello was an oversized frog with a curly red moustache. He spoke fast and assertively, and often seemed as though he was permanently mad about something. But actually he was perfectly happy. Even though Marcello was big for a frog, he was no way near as tall as his wife, Mia. Mia was a beautiful, statuesque greyhound, with a gentle voice and a gentle heart. Mia always had a smile on her face and was very popular with the customers who came back time and time again to their Pizzatopia. Mia and Marcello might have been polar opposites in many ways, but their differences complemented each other, and they were an unstoppable team. However, since their pizza shop had become so popular, they needed an extra pair of hands to help them fulfill all the orders that came in. And bright-eyed and bushy-tailed Munchy the raccoon seemed like the perfect fit. Munchy only hoped that he was cut out for the job. Marcello waddled back to the front of the shop where the phone was already ringing again, and Mia pinned the piece of paper up on the order board that hung above the pizza-making area. Munchy read the order again and asked, is a pizzaluna? Mia rubbed her paws together excitedly and replied, It is a very special type of cheese pizza. The cheese used on a pizzaluna comes from the moon. Munchy gasped. You mean you use moon cheese on your pizzas? He questioned with intrigue. Mia the greyhound nodded her head and responded, Yes, well, only on a pizzaluna. That's what makes it so special. We use normal earth cheese on all other pizzas. Munchy was impressed. He had heard of moon cheese before, but he'd never tried it. Mia guided Munchy through the process of making a pizza so that he could learn as they went along. To begin, she told him to scoop a ladle full of pizza sauce out of the first bucket and tip it onto the plain, doughy base on the worktop. Then, he had to use the bottom of the ladle to spread out the pizza sauce all over the circular dough, leaving just a little space near the outer edges, clear to act as the crust. Then, they could get to work on the pizza toppings. Making a pizzaluna was pretty simple as far as pizzas go. The only toppings Munchy needed to use were a few chunks of moon cheese from one of the buckets, and then a drizzle of garlic oil from one of the sauce bottles. Munchy picked out 3 slices of moon cheese for the pizza, and Mia told him to take one more for himself. It was important to taste test the food, she told him. He placed 3 slices evenly across the pizza base and popped the 4th slice into his mouth. Instantly, the moon cheese began to melt on his tongue. It tasted delicious. It was like no cheese he had tasted on Earth before. It was otherworldly. Munchy inspected his pizzaluna so far. It seemed like there was a lot more pizza sauce than cheese, but Mia assured Munchy that the cheese would melt in the oven and spread out all over the base to create a perfectly gooey, cheesy pizza. Then, last but not least, Munchy picked up the bottle of garlic oil and tipped it onto the pizza with a big dollop. Oh, stop, stop, Mia cried out softly, grabbing the bottle of garlic oil out of Munchy's hands. You've got to be very careful with the oils. Otherwise, they come out too fast. Watch this. Munchy watched as Mia expertly drizzled a small amount of garlic oil across the whole of the pizza with a flourish of her arm. She turned back to Munchy and saw the mixture of doubt and awe on his face, and she whispered, Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. It takes practice. Now that the pizza was ready for the oven, Mia ordered Munchy to grab one of the wooden pizza boards that were stacked up to the side of the oven. The pizza boards were big and round with long handles, and Munchy struggled to wrap his little hands around one. With all his might, he heaved a pizza board off the pile and brought it over to the pizza worktop, wobbling and catching his balance along the way. The pizza boards were a little too big for him. Mia smiled and said, Now, slide the board underneath the pizza dough, and you're going to carry it over to the oven to cook. Munchy braced himself, took a deep breath, and slowly attempted to slide the thin wooden board underneath the delicate pizza dough. The board wobbled from side to side as he tried to balance the heavy board in his tiny hands, but eventually he managed to scoop up the pizza successfully. Munchy sighed with relief and lifted the pizza up off the worktop before turning to face the oven. This would be the hardest part, trying to carry the pizza across the kitchen without dropping it. Munchy took it step by step and focused on keeping the wooden board straight as he slowly moved across the kitchen. The heavy board swayed from side to side, with the pizza Luna perched on top, and beads of sweat began to trickle down Munchy's furry face. "Don't drop it, don't drop it," he muttered to himself pleadingly. The pizza oven drew closer, and Munchy could see the end in sight. With just a few more steps to go, Munchy felt his little hands and wrists beginning to shake. They were getting very tired from carrying the heavy board. He quickened his footsteps and sped towards the oven, holding the pizza out ahead of him. Just as his tiny hands gave in from the weight, he flung the pizza into the open oven, and it landed with a satisfying plop inside. Munchy released the board and wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his fuzzy arm. "That was close," he whispered to himself. Mia applauded Munchy for his efforts and stated that they needed to leave the pizza in the oven for 10 minutes and then check on it to see if it was ready. Munchy sighed and relaxed. He was proud of himself for making his first ever pizza. But there was no time to rest, as Marcello shuffled back over to the pizza worktop and placed a new order on the board. "One pizza vegetariana and one pizza funghi," Marcello called out, before returning to the front of the shop. Munchy looked at Mia, and she raised her eyebrows and said, "Are you ready to make some more?" Munchy took a deep breath, steadied himself, and replied eagerly, "Let's do this." Munchy and Mia spent the next couple of hours working away in the kitchen as order after order poured in from the phone. Munchy learnt the different types of pizzas that they served and how to make each one. He had a go at frying mozzarella sticks and onion rings, and he boxed up each order, ensuring that everything was there, ready to be picked up by the customers. It was a busy job, and Munchy was learning a lot at once, but he loved it. He was having so much fun. The hours ticked by, and Munchy, Mia and Marcello worked equally as hard as each other. Customers came and went, happily collecting their pizzas, and Munchy even heard one of them declare that the pizza today was the best it had ever been. Munchy smiled to himself as Mia nudged him, whispering, "Did you hear that? You're a natural." After a while, the phone calls died down, and the flow of orders lessened so that the 3 pizza shop workers could relax a little. Munchy wiped his furry brow and sighed with relief. He had never worked so hard in his whole life. Marcello toddled over to the weary raccoon and asked in his flamboyant tone, "Munchy, would you like to have a turn working at the front of the shop? It will be good for you to learn how to serve the customers and answer the phones while it is quiet." Munchy gulped. Working out front was a big responsibility. What if he got something wrong? He felt safe hiding away in the back of the kitchen, but Mia urged him to have a go out front. He needed to learn how to serve the customers eventually. So Munchy pulled off his blue hairnet, dusted off his red apron, and proceeded to join Marcello at the front of the shop. Marcello showed Munchy how to use the cash register and count out change. Then he instructed him to answer the phone the next time it rang. After a few minutes, the shop phone began to ring. Munchy picked up the phone and answered in his brightest, most chirpy voice. "Hello, this is Mia and Marcello's Pizzatopia. May I take your order?" he greeted the unknown customer. The voice on the other end paused and then asked with puzzlement, "Munchy, is that you?" Munchy recognized the voice instantly. It was his good friend, Slow Mo the sloth. "Hi, Mo," Munchy replied cheerfully. Mo laughed a slow chuckle. "What are you doing, answering the phone at the pizza shop?" he questioned. Munchy explained that he worked here now. "It's my first day," he added with pride. Slow-Mo was very impressed and delighted that he could order a pizza from his good friend. Mo placed his order with Munchy, and Munchy wrote it down on a piece of paper. Mo wanted an eggplant pizza with extra cheese. Munchy handed the order to Marcello, who was patiently watching and listening in, and the mustachioed frog delivered it to Mia, who was still working in the kitchen. Munchy informed Mo that his pizza would be ready in 20 minutes and prepared to hang up the phone when Mo called out on the other end in his slow drawl, "Munchy, please, can I ask you a favour? At my slow pace, it will take me a long, long time to walk to the shop to collect my pizza. Would it be possible to have it delivered to my house?" Munchy looked to Marcello for advice. He wasn't sure if they offered deliveries. Munchy called out to Marcello and Mia in the kitchen. "Can Mo have his pizza delivered, please?" Marcello replied, "Well, of course he can. We always deliver for Slow Mo." Munchy grinned and told Mo the good news. His sloth friend thanked Munchy for his help and wished him a great rest of his day at work before hanging up the phone to wait for his pizza. Mia whipped up an eggplant pizza with extra cheese pronto and boxed it up for Slow Mo. The delicious scent of freshly melted cheese wafted up out of the box, and Munchy sniffed the air with longing. Slow Mo was lucky to get to eat this pizza soon. Then, to Munchy's surprise, Marcello handed him a helmet, a red and white striped motorbike helmet. "What's this for?" Munchy asked with intrigue. Marcello replied with a smile as he passed Munchy some keys. "It's for you. You are going to deliver Slow-Mo's pizza to him. Take the pizza mobile outside and you'll be there in no time." Munchy looked out the window and noticed the red and white shiny moped parked outside the shop. He clapped his little hands together with glee and strapped the helmet to his head. This was so exciting. Munchy picked up Slow-Mo's pizza and took it outside with him. He placed the pizza box in the delivery bag strapped to the back of the moped and climbed aboard. Turning the key in the ignition, the moped chugged to life with a grumble, and the moped vibrated gently beneath him. He held onto the handlebars, pressed down on the pedal with his foot, and the moped zoomed off into Sleepy Forest, with Munchy and Mo's order on board. Munchy squealed with joy as he rode through the forest to Mo's house. When he had set off for work today, he hadn't thought for a second that he would get an opportunity to deliver pizzas on the pizzamobile. But here he was. This day was turning into the best day ever. Munchy zoomed in and out of the trees, over bridges and through puddles, waving to passers-by as he went. He spotted several of his Sleepy Forest friends as he drove by, and they all cried out with disbelief, "Wow, that's Munchy," as he sped by. Munchy the raccoon felt on top of the world. Eventually he reached the bottom of the tree where Slow-Mo the sloth lived, and he parked up and hopped off the bike. He unpacked the pizza box from the delivery bag and called up the tree, "Mo, I have your eggplant pizza." A smiley, slovenly face peeped out from behind a tree branch and gushed, "Oh, thank you, Munchy. I can't wait to eat it." Munchy watched as the friendly sloth slowly climbed down the tree to the forest floor and retrieved his pizza. "Thank you again, Munchy," Mo said. "Would you like a slice as a reward for your hard work?" Munchy was tempted, but he shook his head professionally. "No, thank you, Mo," he replied politely. "You enjoy that pizza for yourself. It's best that I get back to the shop to continue helping with the orders. It gets very busy at Mia and Marcello's Pizzatopia." Waving goodbye to his friend, Munchy jumped back on the pizzamobile and raced back through Sleepy Forest to return to the pizza shop. He passed by his friends all over again, and they cheered him on as he zoomed by. "Go, Munchy!" they chanted with encouragement, and Munchy grinned beneath his red and white striped helmet. Pulling up at Mia and Marcello's Pizzatopia once more, Munchy dashed back inside, ready to jump straight back in with the busy orders, but was surprised by what he saw. Mia and Marcello were sitting at the front counter, sharing a large pizza between them. They turned to Munchy and smiled. "Well done, Munchy." Marcello smiled in a surprisingly jovial voice. "You have done a very impressive job today." Mia lifted up the pizza box and offered it towards Munchy, asking, "Would you like a slice?" Munchy gazed at the gooey, cheesy pizza and licked his lips. His tummy grumbled, and he reached out and grabbed a slice. He definitely wanted a slice, maybe even 3. Munchy shoveled the slice of pizza in his mouth and gratefully enjoyed the delicious flavors. This really was one of the best pizza places around. He was proud to work here. Munchy finished his slice and asked, "Are we not making any more orders?" Mia and Marcello giggled and told him to sit down. "Even pizza makers need to have a break every now and then, Munchy," Mia replied, offering him another slice of pizza, which he delightedly took. Munchy smiled and relaxed. He did need a break, actually. It had been a very busy day, and it had been torturous making all these delicious pizzas without getting to eat any of his own. Munchy was relieved to finally sit down, relax with Mia and Marcello, and devour some pizza. Munchy was officially a part of the team. Mia and Marcello had been so impressed with his efforts today, and most importantly, Munchy was proud of himself. He had learnt a lot of new skills and approached it all with a positive attitude. Plus, riding around on the Pizzamobile had been so much fun. As Munchy hung up his apron and set off for home at the end of his shift, Munchy was already looking forward to returning to work tomorrow. As the sun set in the distance, Munchy looked back at the sign above the shop door and thought to himself, Mia, Marcello, and Munchy's Pizzatopia has a good ring to it. Then he set off home, skipping all the way with a box of moon cheese in his little raccoon hands. Be Brave, Little Lion by Gillian Rogerson. The sun rose over the magical land of Oz. Sunlight flowed gently over the lavender-coloured hills and down through the grassy valleys. The inhabitants of Oz woke from their sleep and greeted the brand new day with joy and appreciation. It was going to be another beautiful day. In a cosy corner of the forest, the Cowardly Lion awoke and let out a long, satisfying yawn. He stood up and slowly arched his back. When he saw how brightly the sun was shining, he smiled to himself. He knew it was going to be a wonderful day. He could feel it in his fur. At that moment, Glinda the Good magically appeared in front of him. She was wearing a navy cloak, which was threaded with shimmering gold thread. Her eyes shone with love as she looked at Lion. She walked closer to him and asked if he had any plans for the day ahead. Lion answered, I haven't given it much thought yet, but it's such a beautiful day that I'd like to do something special. Do you have any suggestions for me, please? Glinda did have some ideas. You could visit your friends in Munchkin country, or call upon your cousins in the Gillikin area. How about a visit to Quadling? The roses are looking particularly charming this season, and the walk through the Lavender Mountains is always a most relaxing one. Lion scratched his head and said, Yes, I could do any of those things, if I wanted to. He looked at the forest ahead of him, and the yellow brick road that was just visible on the horizon. It was a road that could take him in many directions. He told Glinda he would have a good think about her suggestions, and he knew the perfect place to do that. He asked Glinda what she would be doing that sunny day. She wasn't sure yet, but would start by visiting the people of Oz and see if anyone needed her help. With a kind smile, Glinda wished him a wonderful day, whatever he ended up doing. She waved her hand in the air and disappeared. Lion strolled over to an old pine tree and settled down in the comfy curve he had created there over the years during many nap times. The grass around the trunk was soft and comfy, and the aroma coming from the pine tree was extremely soothing. Lion placed his paws behind his head and let out a long sigh of happiness. He felt so peaceful, so very relaxed. The sun was shining. The sky was a beautiful shade of blue. Lion had all day to do whatever he wanted. He loved sitting beneath the pine tree. Many, many restful naps had been taken there. Relaxing, peaceful naps. He sighed again. He wondered how many animals had slept there over the years. All those naps, all those sleepy times. Somewhere at the back of his mind, there was the slightest feeling that he ought to be considering some matter or other, something to do with where he could go that day. But the feeling soon melted away like early morning frost on a sunny day. Lion's mind became clear of all thoughts, and he listened to the soothing melody coming from the birds nestled in the branches above him. It sounded like they were singing a song. From a few trees away, some other birds joined in with the singing. It was a restful, tranquil tune. A gentle breeze travelled through the trees, making a soft, rustling noise. The same breeze flowed over Lion and ruffled his fur. He snuggled down some more in the soft grass, and a smile of pure joy rested on his face. How wonderful it was to slow down for a while and not do much at all, apart from listening to the birds singing and feeling the warm breeze on his fur. There was nowhere else for him to be, and nothing else for him to do. He gazed softly at the shape of the branches above him and noticed how the leaves differed ever so slightly from each other. The colours varied too, from dark juniper green to pale mint green. Fluffy white clouds drifted leisurely across the pale blue sky, as though they had all the time in the world to float on by. Lion sighed happily again and gazed softly at the leaves. By and by, a familiar figure appeared on the horizon. It was Scarecrow. He was wearing his blue suit and brown hat. Tufts of golden straw peeked out of his sleeves and trousers. Lion smiled at his friend and stood up to greet him. They exchanged pleasantries and made comments about the beautiful day. Scarecrow said, "It's the perfect day for pondering the mysteries of the world, don't you think? To get lost in deep thoughts about what is happening around us." Lion had never given any thought to mysteries of any kind, but being a good friend, he asked Scarecrow to explain what he meant. Scarecrow said he could explain it better by showing him, and said, "If you're not too busy, perhaps we could go on a stroll, and I'll tell you all about the delightful conundrums that are occupying my mind." Lion didn't know what a conundrum was, and hoped it would soon become clear. He told Scarecrow he was never too busy for his friend, and would love to take a stroll with him. The two friends set off on a wander through the trees. Rays of sunlight danced back and forth over the path ahead of them. After a while, Scarecrow stopped walking and knelt at the side of a flower patch. He looked at a cluster of tall orange tulips and said, "Look at these, my friend. Every year they grow in this sunlit area, and when they've finished flowering, they bow their heads and give way to other flowers. Isn't that wonderful? How do they know when it's time to bloom and when it's time to take a rest? How clever they are." Lion nodded and said it was indeed wonderful. His brow furrowed in thought, and he said, I think I'm like a tulip too, because I know when it's time to get up, and more importantly, when it's time to go to sleep. Scarecrow smiled and said he could just imagine Lion as a tulip, smiling happily at everyone who walked past him. The thought made Lion chuckle. Scarecrow turned his attention back to the tulips and said, In the winter, when the tulip bulbs are resting in the soil, do you think they dream? Lion gave the matter some considerable thought and said that if tulip bulbs did dream, he imagined their dreams would be full of sunny days, refreshing rain, and moonlit nights. And maybe they dreamed about seeing their tulip friends again in the spring. Scarecrow thanked him warmly for his reply and said it was the perfect answer. He smiled as he thought about the tulip bulbs snug in the soil, dreaming about their friends. Scarecrow and Lion moved away from the patch of flowers and carried on walking. Scarecrow looked skyward at the clouds, and from the look on his face, Lion could tell he was having more deep thoughts. He was right, because a few moments later, Scarecrow asked Lion if water droplets inside the clouds liked being part of a rain shower, or if they preferred being snowflakes instead. Or perhaps they liked staying inside the cozy cloud and being carried along the sky all day. What would Lion think about if he were a droplet of water? It didn't take Lion long to come up with a reply. I think, Scarecrow, that if I were a droplet of water inside a cloud, I would like to be part of a rainbow. The sun would be out and it would be raining at the same time. A lovely combination. When it was my turn to fall from the cloud, I would drift in front of the sun and become a rainbow with my water droplet friends. I wonder if I could choose which colour I would be. I think I'd be yellow, because that colour always makes me smile. What colour would you be, Scarecrow? Scarecrow clasped his hands together in delight and said that was a wonderful question. He'd quite like to be indigo, because it reminded him of the night sky. He loved looking at the night sky, especially on a clear night when the stars were visible. He thought the twinkling stars were magical. He smiled at Lion and said, Sometimes, when I see the first star of the night, I make a wish upon it. Those wishes often come true. I might try doing that, although I can't think of anything I want to wish for at the moment, Lion said. Thinking about the stars made Lion come up with some more questions for his friend. Scarecrow, where do the stars go during the day? And do you think they dream too? And what about the moon? Where does that go during the day? Do you think the stars and the moon play games together somewhere when they're not in the night sky? A faraway look came into Scarecrow's eyes. My goodness, Lion, that is a lot of deep thinking you're doing. What interesting questions. I shall enjoy thinking about them. Do you want to walk with me a little longer, and we can discuss your questions further? Out of nowhere, a yawn escaped from Lion. It took him quite by surprise. He apologized to Scarecrow and said all that deep thinking had made him very tired indeed. He yawned again and said, "If you don't mind, Scarecrow, I would like to take a short nap now. Perhaps when we meet again, we can do some more pondering together." Scarecrow said he didn't mind at all if Lion took a nap. He thanked Lion for spending some time with him and wished him a restful nap. Scarecrow left Lion to his rest and walked away, his eyes, as usual, full of questions. Lion walked to one of his favourite resting places, a meadow full of beautiful wild flowers. He saw the flowers swaying in the breeze as if they were dancing. The air was fragranced with calming chamomile and sweet lavender. Butterflies fluttered lazily amongst the flowers, and bumblebees buzzed as they flitted from flower to flower. Lion strolled through the long grass of the meadow, the sun warm and comforting on his back. His resting area was at the far end of the meadow, beneath the shade of a willow tree, and when he reached the area, Lion stood on his back legs and stretched his front paws high into the air. He leaned gently to one side and then to the other. After that, he lowered his front paws and touched his toes. It felt good to have a long stretch. Lion settled himself down in the soft grass and let out a happy sigh. He turned over onto his side and closed his eyes. Bees hummed gently overhead. Birds sang the sweetest of songs. A balmy breeze flowed over him ever so softly. Lion drifted into a sweet slumber. When he awoke a short time later, he was met by the delightful sight of another friend. It was Tin Woodman this time. As was always the case with his friend, Tin Woodman had a big smile on his face. The good friends exchanged pleasantries and made comments about the beautiful day. Tin Woodman said it was always a beautiful day in the land of Oz, but today felt extra special. There were many beautiful sights to behold, more than usual it seemed to him. Tin Woodman asked Lion if he would like to walk with him and see what nature had to offer them that fine day. Lion said he would like that very much and thanked him for the offer. He stood up and had another good stretch before walking with his friend through the meadow. Their walk through the meadow took longer than normal because Tin Woodman felt compelled to stop at every beautiful flower he saw and proclaim its loveliness to Lion. It wasn't just the flowers that caused gratitude to fill Tin Woodman's heart. It was also the wondrous sight of a pale purple butterfly resting on a yellow poppy, and the delicate wings of a dragonfly that looked so enchanting in the sunlight. Tin Woodman said the gentle sound of the wind travelling through the treetops was like a soft lullaby. The cheerful song of a robin brought Tin Woodman to a stop. He placed his hands over his heart and thanked the robin for her charming tune. Seeing his friend so full of happiness made Lion feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Lion followed Tin Woodman's example and looked more closely at his surroundings. He'd never noticed before how red a ladybird's wings were, or how a frog's legs bent so perfectly just before she hopped into a pond. He was utterly amazed to see the perfection of a red rose, with its petals wrapped around each other like a floral hug. He shared his findings with Tin Woodman, who agreed that everything looked extra enchanting that day. With one last admiring look at the meadow, Lion and Tin Woodman left it behind and headed towards the yellow brick road. Tin Woodman said wasn't it glorious to have such a brightly coloured route that could take them anywhere their hearts desired. And each direction would lead to somewhere marvellous. The yellow road was an avenue to any number of amazing adventures. Such was Tin Woodman's enthusiasm for the road ahead, and journeys as yet unknown, that Lion found himself making up entertaining stories about where the road might lead. Perhaps they would find a treasure map on the road, and it would lead them to a hidden chest overflowing with gold coins, or a magic wand that could turn everything a different colour. Tin Woodman joined in with the game and said, "What if the road turned into a river and a ship sailed towards us? And when we climbed on board, we were taken to a land far away." Lion said that sounded like great fun. He imagined standing on the deck of a splendid ship, looking out at the vast ocean with his friends right next to him. What a lovely adventure that would be. Thinking about all those adventures made Lion feel drowsy, and he walked a little slower along the yellow brick road. He felt a yawn bubbling up inside him. He didn't want to appear rude, so he put his paw over his mouth to cover it up. Despite his best efforts, Tin Woodman noticed Lion yawning and suggested that he rest for a while. They could continue their walk another day and make up some more adventures that might lay ahead on the yellow brick road. Lion said he would like that very much, and yes, it would be a good idea if he took a rest. The two friends said goodbye and then headed off in different directions. As usual, Tin Woodman's eyes were full of love and appreciation for everything he gazed upon. Lion walked on, yawning now and again. He knew there was a blackberry bush not far away, and it provided a welcome amount of shade. And not only that, the blackberries were delicious and perfect for a late afternoon snack. It was a blissful place for a lion who was in a snoozy mood. Lion ambled through the forest until he came to the blackberry bush. He settled down beneath it and spent a peaceful hour dozing under the leaves. The surrounding sounds of nature provided a background lullaby for him. After a restful nap, Lion left the blackberry bush and wandered further into the forest. He heard the sound of a waterfall and knew it was the one that flowed into a warm lagoon. A soak in the warm water sounded like an excellent idea to Lion, so he changed direction and headed towards the waterfall. Before long, he reached Sapphire Lagoon. The pale blue water looked particularly inviting under the light of the early evening sun. Yellow lotus flowers floated on the surface of the water, looking like delicate jewels. Palm trees at the side of the lagoon cast long shadows across the surface of the water. Lion slipped into the warm water and swam over to the shaded area beneath the leafy palm tree. Once there, he lay on his back and gazed upwards through the branches. The sky was gradually growing darker and turning pink around the edges. Lion let out a sigh of pure happiness and took time to notice what was happening around him. He heard the soft babbling of a brook and a frog calling out a happy hello to a friend. He gazed at two pale lilac butterflies who were dancing joyfully around each other as they flew over the water. The leaves of the palm trees swished against each other and created a soothing tune. Lion put his paws behind his head and gently floated across the lagoon. No effort was needed at all, and he let himself drift along the smooth surface, feeling very calm and peaceful. The water in Sapphire Lagoon was warm and relaxing. Lion had nowhere else to be and nothing else to do. He felt so very peaceful and tranquil and a little bit sleepy. The warm water of the lagoon supported Lion as he drifted serenely along. The sun continued on its journey across the sky. One star appeared in the dark blue sky, twinkling brightly. In the distance, Lion heard the faint call of parents telling their little ones it was nearly time for bed. Lion realized it was nearly his bedtime too, and he should be heading home soon. He told himself he would get out of the lagoon very soon. Very soon indeed. But it was so very peaceful and warm in the water. The lion stayed there for another 10 minutes. It was only when the sky turned darker that Lion finally got out of the water. He shook himself dry before heading home. The path from the lagoon took Lion to the yellow brick road. Lion stepped onto it and ambled along. He could see the Emerald City far away. The final setting rays of the sun lingered on the city, making the buildings shimmer and twinkle like they were made of green stars. As his friends and neighbours saw him walking along the road, they called out, "Good night, sweet dreams." Lion waved in response and said, hadn't it been a lovely day? Everyone agreed that it had indeed been a lovely day. When he arrived home, he found Glinda the Good waiting for him. She asked about his day and what he had done. Lion told her everything, including how Scarecrow had asked Lion about dreaming tulips, and how Tin Woodman had thanked the robin for her beautiful song. "It sounds like you've had a day full of delights," Glinda said. "I have," Lion agreed. "And it's made me very tired." He put a paw over his mouth to cover up a yawn. He didn't know he had so many yawns inside him. Glinda said she would leave him to his sleep and wished him a relaxing night's rest. With a kind smile on her face, she faded from view. Lion slowly stretched this way and that. A nighttime stretch always felt good. Then he settled down in his comfy, leaf-lined bed. As he relaxed more and more, warm memories of his day alighted softly in his mind. The sights and sounds of the forest, the calming waters of Sapphire Lagoon, the yellow brick road that meandered through the land of Oz, and his friends, his dear, dear friends, who filled his heart with love every day. With a happy sigh, Lion fell fast asleep. Now we're drifting gently from the waking world into the world of dreams. Our body is soft and heavy. Our arms are heavy and our legs are heavy too. Our breathing is gentle and relaxed. Our breath going in through our noses and down into our chests. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Just like the waves lapping back and forth, carrying you gently into sleep. In the waking world, our bodies are busy and active, but as we pass into the world of dreams, our bodies can relax. Let your bodies relax now. Let your eyes relax. Let your fingers relax. Let your toes relax. Feel all the muscles of your body sink down further into your warm and cozy duvet. Feel your body rest heavily down on the firm comfort of your bed. Now feel as your body relaxes how your mind is released. Feel just how free your mind is. The world of dreams is like a playground for your mind. There are swings and roundabouts and slides where your mind can play. In the world of dreams, your mind gets bigger and bigger and fills your sleep with all kinds of joys and wonders and magical stories. And here is something that not many people know, but it's a secret I'm going to tell you. But you're the only one I'm going to tell. When we go to sleep and pass into the world of dreams, we are accompanied by the kindly spirits who live in the dream world. They live on the moon, and when nighttime comes, they float down softly as silk to meet each person who is drifting into sleep. The dream spirits are waiting there for your mind to arrive, and when you get there, they take your hand in theirs and squeeze it gently and guide you through the world of dreams. Isn't that wonderful? To have a guide who can keep you company even as you sleepwalk through the world of dreams. They take you by the hand, they give you a friendly squeeze, they guide you into sleep. The spirits of the dream world ask you, what would you like to dream about tonight? And because your dreams are your very own playground, where you can build and create anything your imagination desires, you can answer however you like. Maybe tonight in your dreams you would like to climb a tree, sit in the canopy, surrounded by tinkling leaves and bathed in dappled moonlight, and listen to the nightingale sing, or the crickets chirrup from the forest floor below. Or perhaps you would like the dream spirits to guide you into a magical world where you can learn how to perform all kinds of wondrous spells and charms. You can go on adventures, flying through the air on your broomstick. The white clouds spread out below you like an ocean of fluffy marshmallows. Or maybe you'd like to visit a magical zoo, full of rabbits and puppies and kittens whose fur is so soft and comes in all kinds of different colours, brown and white and black, but also purple and green and blue. In this zoo you can find all kinds of animals that you can't find in the waking world. Animals people in the waking world say couldn't possibly exist. But they do. They do exist. And you know why? Because your mind is so powerful and rich and magical that in the world of dreams, anything is possible. Your imagination is an enchanted place. It can create whole worlds out of thin air, out of nothing. Anything your heart desires can be found in the world of dreams. So let your eyelids be heavy. Let your body sink into the warmth of your duvet. Let your body drift into a deep and peaceful sleep. And let your mind float away into the world of dreams. The dream spirits are waiting to guide you through their magical world, their world of wonder, their world of delight. See the soft smiles on their beaming faces. Feel the warmth of their hands in yours. They take you by the hand. They give you a friendly squeeze. They guide you into sleep. Walk with them and let them lead you on magical adventures into the world of dreams. The jungles of green leaves with all kinds of creatures ready to show you their lives. To castles built out of clouds. To rivers bright as rainbows for you to swim down. To crackling campfires next to lakes where the pitter-patter sound of rain sounds like the gentle tinkling of music. Remember to thank your dream spirits for guiding you lovingly through the land of dreams. Say, thank you, dream spirits. And when you say, thank you, dream spirits, the dream spirits will say, thank you back. Because the dream spirits are just as lucky to accompany you through your magical dream world as you are that the spirits are there to guide you. So let your eyes close. Let the lids fall heavy. Let every part of your body, from the top of your head to the tips of your fingers and toes, be warm and heavy and sleepy. Let your mind slip into the peaceful world of sleep, where anything is possible. Good night.